What's up, guys? Welcome to Union Fitness. We're back. We're here today. I'm with Jared, and we're going to start a series every Wednesday. We're going to be going over different lifts. We're going to talk injury prevention. We're going to talk maintenance and performance. All right, so today, day one, is going to be the squat basics and different variations of the squat. So we got our mono set up. Our first thing we're going to talk about is the squat setup. We're going to go over kind of our checklist that we would have. Then we're going to go over the execution of the squat once we have the setup in place. And then we're going to go over different variations of the squat. And we're going to talk about a little bit about how those variations are going to benefit you. So first what we're going to do, we got our bar set up, and we're going to go over the first 5 steps to a perfect squat. All right, so the first one is going to be, we're going to have Jared come over here. First one's going to be bar placement and hand position. So first thing, we always want to set our hands first, right? That's the first thing we do. We grab the bar where we want our hands. It's going to depend on a number of factors. It's going to depend on how wide you are or how narrow you are, how long your legs are, how long your arms are. It's also going to depend on kind of your bar position on your back. So those are things that we're going to talk through. Jared is typically kind of a what we consider like a mid-bar position, a low-bar position. So he's going to have his hands a little wider. They're not going to be directly against his body, but he's going to build a good shelf. And that's the number one thing you want to do with your hand position. And when you set the bar into your back, is you want to find the position that it just sticks in place. You want to build that shelf. So he's going to go ahead. He's got his hands set evenly on each side. He's using the bar to wedge under to create a shelf with his rear delts. This is going to be different for everybody, but for Jared, it's his rear delts. So from here, he's got his bar position, his bar placement. Now what we're going to do is he's going to focus on his sternum and his back. So from the side, we're going to focus on his sternum position. We don't want it down towards the floor. All right. Right now, his head position can be there because he's setting up. But we want to get this tall right there, and then we want to lock the upper back in. So what he's doing is he's creating tension down on that bar, and he's almost thinking about bending it. Right. He's thinking about kind of bending it over his shoulders and around his body. That's going to keep this tight the whole time. Right. That's what we're going to focus on the setup and while we're squatting. So he's got a tall sternum, he's got a tight back. Now he's going to set his head and his eyes. Now this is different for everybody, but typically we want to be out in front. We don't necessarily have to be up, and we don't want to be straight down because the body's going to follow where our eyes are. So we want to have our eyes straight out. We want to have our head packed in a good neutral position. So we got a straight line from the back of the skull down to the back. That's what we want. We don't want that head to get stuck out in front because that's where our body's going to follow. So he's got his head packed, good. He's got his eyes straight ahead, his sternum up, his back tight. Now he's going to adjust his feet as he needs to get them, the midfoot directly under the bar. All right, so the midfoot's directly in line with the bar. He doesn't have them back too far, and he doesn't have them in front of him too far. This is because when we unrack, when we stand tall, we want to be completely balanced. Now his feet right now are right around shoulder width apart. When you're walking the bar out, you want your feet closer so you can take your steps, your small steps out. If he were using the mono, he would typically set them in the position that he wants to squat in. But right now, he's got them shoulder width apart, feet under him, bar over the midfoot, and now right before he unracks, he's going to take his hips and he's going to wedge them under him, and that's going to create that upward tension, keeping his back tight, and now he can stand up tall. From there, he's going to take 2 to 3 small steps back, keeping the position that we worked on the setup, and now he's good to go. So he's got his setup down. Now we're going to go ahead and rack it, and we're going to talk a little bit about the execution. So, Jared, do you have anything to add to that? Or is that pretty good?
Good.
Okay. Jared's been squatting for a while. He has a really good squat, so that's something that he's found what works for him, right? But for most people, that's going to be a big trial and error process. It's not going to happen in a week, a month. It's going to take a couple years of trying different things. My recommendation would be to try something for a few training sessions and then make one adjustment. Don't make multiple adjustments in one training session. You got to control variables and find out what it is that's helping or what it is that's taking away. So now that we have the setup, we're going to go over the execution. Number one thing, how we want to initiate the squat is by opening up the hips and spreading the floor. When we say spread the floor, that's not going to come from our knees. So what happens a lot of times is we focus on externally rotating, but just with our knees. So we're driving our knees out, but then it causes us to actually lose tension in the hips and lose our traction into the floor. So when we have our feet set, right before we go to squat, we want to drive the floor away from us, not rolling up on the foot, pushing the floor out. If you just stand there and do that, that's going to generate tension in the hips. So we want to open up the hips, and then we want to drive out. From there, we want to think about bending the bar like we talked about on the setup. That is going to generate tension in the upper back, which is going to keep the sternum elevated the whole time and the back tight. Bend the bar, sternum up, same thing. Then we're going to sit back, all right? So we're not just, when we initiate this squat, yes, we're opening up and we're driving out. We're not sitting straight down. We want to keep those hips loaded up. We want to keep the glutes turned on. So we want to sit back and then down, right? Just like we're sitting in a chair, it's no different. That's going to keep the tension on our hips, and that's going to help keep our sternum nice and tall. And then, when we get in the hole, we're keeping tension everywhere, keeping that good position. When we come up, we want to think about wedging. Think about a door and a door wedge. When that door wedge, when we push it underneath the door, it kicks the door up. That's what we want to think about doing. That wedge is actually our hips. So when we're coming up from the bottom of the squat, we're not thinking about just driving through the floor, because our chest is going to stay out in front of us and that bar could get out away from us. We want to think about wedging our hips underneath of us to bring us straight up. Think the same thing as a good morning, right? If we're doing a good morning, our hips are actually behind us, and we want to wedge them under the bar to elevate the chest. So that's exactly what we're doing in the squat. So, anything I missed there? Pretty good.
No, I'd say the only thing to add for execution when you talk about spreading the floor is if you can't figure that one out, try grabbing the ground with your feet. That's it. You'll be able to do it as soon as you do that.
Yeah, definitely. And some things that would help with that, I think, and I'm sure you do these in the office all the time, resistance band around the knees. You could do it on the warm-up, throw a mini band around the knees, think about externally rotating, twisting into the floor, driving out. That's a good practice, good warm-up drill.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get Jared back up on the bar. We're going to go through the execution. First thing he's going to do, right, set his back, sternum up. Get his head and his eyes in a good position, feet under him. And then he's going to wedge the hips under and stand up tall. Good. So he's going to take his small step back. Now he's going to focus on number one, first thing, opening up and then driving out into the floor. All right? So go ahead and start the movement nice and slow. He's going to open up, drive. Good. Now he's thinking about bending the bar across his back the whole time. You can actually see the tension in his arms and his back, right? When he's coming up, he's thinking about driving those hips under him and bringing the chest up. Notice he did not lead by just driving through the floor, right? So he's opening up, sitting back, keeping the sternum high, keeping the tension, and now he's driving his hips through to stand up tall. Now do it as if you weren't wedging your hips in, right? So just drive through the floor. So he's good. Notice how he stayed in that forward position, right? That's where a lot of people get in trouble. So big thing, we want to think about wedging those hips under us as we're coming up. So tension here, and drive. Good. Now one thing, if, again, this is individualized. Jared has a very good squat, and his head position is very kind of individualized for him. Now, for most people, one thing I would recommend is as they're going down, especially a newer lifter, as they're going down, keep the eyes up a little bit and the head back, so the chin back just a little bit. So go ahead and pack your head a little bit. Good. So I recommend that they keep that. So go ahead, open up, sitting back, eyes straight forward, and then wedge under. Good. Yep, that's the only thing. So, but again, that just takes some practice. Find what works for you. Good. Good. So remember, the main thing we want to focus on first: open up, spread the floor. Open up the hips, spread the floor. Keep the tension with that bar the whole time. And if you do that, it's going to keep that sternum elevated. I don't really like saying chest up or head up or eyes up, because I can still come, if I'm thinking about coming up from the bottom, I can still have my eyes up and my head up, but my sternum is down, right? That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for sternum up. So if we think about tension in the bar and then driving the sternum up, we're automatically going to have a better head position. So that's just one thing that I've learned. Always want to sit back. That just makes sure that we don't get forward, we don't get on the balls of our feet. We want to keep that tension or that pressure on the whole entire foot. Not just the heels, and certainly not the front of the foot, the whole foot. And then we want to think about being a door wedge when we're coming up out of the hole. Think good?
We're good.
All right.
Good.
So now we're going to talk about a couple different variations of the squat. I didn't put a low bar on here because typically people's squat, their especially competition squat, is naturally a low bar position. So we're going to talk about high bar position. Now what this is when the bar is higher up on your back, typically up on your traps. So Jared's going to go ahead and he's going to set up. Typically, remember he would have that bar down here on the shelf. Now we're putting it up on his traps. So what this is going to do is it's going to make him rely a lot on his back strength and his core strength. All right, because anytime that bar goes higher, it's going to be harder to stay in a good position. So when he unracks and he executes this, he's going to be in a much more upright position. What that's going to do, go ahead and hit a couple reps here. With that bar higher, now he's much more upright. You see he has a little more knee travel forward, so that's going to emphasize the quads quite a bit more than the hips would if we were doing a lower bar or competition bar position. Go ahead and like that. So that's our high bar. That's a traditional high bar where it's actually up high on the traps. Next one is going to be a front squat. If we want to really build that core strength and that rigid, strong torso in the squat, in my opinion, this is one of, if not the best exercises for it. With that bar up on your shoulders, you're going to have to stay engaged through the trunk in order to stay upright and keep that bar from pulling you forward. There's a couple ways that you can set this up. We're going to do kind of like the traditional way. So he's going to put it right up on his front delts. Now it's important to really reach like he is so you can build a shelf right here, right? The last thing we want is for the elbows to be down. That's not the position that we want to be in because that's going to cause you to lose that bar. So we want it up. It's going to, if it's in a good position, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. But now he's got those front delts locked in and that bar is perfectly locked in on that shelf. Notice his hands are crossed and they're just balancing the bar in the center. So from here, he's going to have his feet under him, he's going to stand up tall, he's going to take a small step backwards, and again, he's trying to stay tight through the midsection, and he's trying to stay strong through the back, keeping those shoulder blades locked down, all right? That's going to help keep him nice and upright. So go ahead and hit a couple reps nice and slow. Notice again, it's more quad dominant, right, than your low bar squat, than your competition squat. So it is going to build the quads, but it's also really going to help, like I said, build the trunk strength and train you to stay in a good position during your normal squat. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to switch these bars out. we're going to talk about a SSB squat, safety squat bar, or a yoke bar. These are they're really good if you have shoulder injuries or you have any limitations that prevent you from getting under a straight bar. They do, in certain ways, make the squat a little bit more challenging. Because what it's doing is basically turning the squat into a high bar squat by placing the pad high on your upper back. Now, because of the slight camber of the bar that you see here, notice the handles are actually in front of the camber of the bar here. What it's going to try to do, those weights are going to try to pull you forward. The handles are going to try to come down on you. So this is a great exercise for emphasizing upper back strength and learning how to stay tight through the upper back throughout the entirety of the squat. It's also going to place a large amount of stress on the abs, obliques, lower back. So it's a great training tool, not something that I would typically say use forever or at all times, but great to wave it, 3 weeks, 4 weeks at a time. So Jared's going to go ahead and set up underneath. He's going to lock this bar in right on his upper back. Notice he's got his feet under him. He's holding onto the handles, but what we don't want to do is we don't want to push up on the handles. We don't want to necessarily pull down on them either. We want to keep them in a nice neutral position, and we want to use the tension in our lats to keep them locked in. So if you do this correctly, you shouldn't really see those handles move through too much throughout the entirety of the lift. So he's going to go ahead and stand up tall, small steps back. Notice his head's in a nice neutral position. The lats are tight. He's going to treat it the exact same. He's going to open up. He's going to sit back, but he's going to keep that torso high and tall. Keep the tension, and then go ahead and drive up. Good. Now, the more weight you put on this bar, the more this bar is going to want to do that to you, right? So that's the beauty and the curse of this thing right here. Is it's going to try to put you in a compromised position, but it's going to teach you how to avoid that when you're doing your barbell squat. So that's our SSB squat. And we have one more, box squat. Now we're going to save this for a future episode. That's a great one. That's a great one for developing the hips, the glutes, and teaching you really how to drive out and create a lot of tension through the hips during the squat. So anything you want to add to what we went over?
No, I think we covered the basics here, and just based off of what we said, if you can identify your own weaknesses, you can start trying to pick out what you need to program in your own training, and if that doesn't work, there are professionals here who can help you with that.
That's you too. Jared's here in the mornings, he's at the front desk, but if you're ever here, pick his brain. He's got great knowledge, great input. Just like he said, this comes in handy when you're thinking about your own weaknesses, right? So if in a majority of lifters and majority of people who squat, the upper back is going to be a weakness, the core is going to be a weakness, and the hips. Typically, quads for most people aren't really a weakness, would you say? Yeah, I mean, a majority of people have pretty developed quads, especially if they've been lifting for a while. So if you have a weakness in your upper back or core or hips, typically your SSB is going to be a good one. If it's just your upper back and your core, high bar front squat are going to be good ones. But they're really all beneficial. It's just about trying them all and seeing what you respond to. But just it takes time, practice, patience, and just find what works for you guys. So thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next Wednesday.
Later.